Welcome everyone to How to Father Podcasts. I'm your host, Troy Rivas. This is a podcast on the amateurness of being a dad. Thank you everyone for tuning into the last episode with Dr. Natasha Najjar. Wonderful topics, amazing feedback from that episode. So once again, thank you. Real quick, I'll give a quick shout out. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting the podcast, from Shay 808, who does the beats, to my own Navigation Realty Group company, Navigation Realty Group. Thank you, everyone who's been a part of that and has helped me continue my business by trusting me to help them buy and sell properties here in New Mexico. Above Snakes, that men's boutique shop there in Old Town, a great spot if you want to look fashionable and sustainable at the same time. Duke City Beaches is a local volleyball place that has been supporting us since day one, and of course is allowing us to advertise there as well. So thank you guys so very much. Again, it's been a wonderful journey. We're at episode 7. It's been 7 weeks of this. I still can't believe that. And on today's episode, I'm in a legit podcast room. We have Mr. Alex Tena, and he is the host of the Culture Punch podcast. And my setup it works, but this is like professional stuff. And so I'm super stoked, super excited to be back with Alex. We've been on a few episodes of the Culture Punch podcast, and so I'm excited to have him on my little podcast, How to Father. So Alex, welcome.
I'm excited, man. I'm honored. I really am. Thank you for having me on.
No, you're multiple things. Number one, a good father. Number two, a coach, and that's why I wanted to have that. We could talk about facets of topics when it comes to fatherhood, but yeah. I think you as a coach and your sports background really could touch base with a lot of people, a lot of dads out there that have that expectation for their kids to be in sports, etc. So tell us something about yourself, where you're from, your fatherhood experience as a son, how many kiddos you have, and all that fun stuff.
All right. Well, originally my family and I were from Mexico, migrated when I was a baby. Funny story, we actually migrated because my biological father and my mom, they were having issues, and so they ended up splitting when I was very young. We came over, and then we ended up meeting my stepdad, and my stepdad has always been dad to me because that's all I've ever known.
Exactly.
So I was probably about 3.5 or so, right? Whenever she met my stepdad, and that relationship moved pretty fast. I mean, we moved in to a new apartment all together, so it wasn't like we moved into his place. He ended up getting a new apartment where we all moved in, and then they've been together ever since. So to me, that's my father, you know.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And so, and he's a traditional older Mexican man. You know, he wasn't very present as a father. His ideology or his thoughts on what a father is that he needs to be a provider. So whatever that looks like, whether that looks like working 12, 14, 16 hours a day,
exactly.
He needs to be able to provide, and he needs to set us up for the future. So that's kind of where his mindset was. And that's kind of what I saw growing up. But my mom did a really good job of balancing everything out, because even though she would work, 8 to 12 hours, she was still making meals at home. She was still, not necessarily helping me with my homework, but being very present while I'm doing homework. It
exactly.
just, making me feel as though like I'm here, even though she's like, I can't really help you because I don't understand it. I'm here, so for support. So she was really good about that. But yeah, that's kind of my background. I think I got like my fathering experience. I tell Alyssa this all the time. I believe in like no excuses. There's no excuse for anything, right? Everyone goes through something. Everyone's troubled with something. And in my instance, I saw my dad, and I realized that he did things this way, so then I'm gonna be the polar opposite.
Exactly.
Right? So even though it wasn't a good example, it was an example, so I knew what I didn't want to do because I knew how I felt. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it wasn't like I never really felt loved growing up by my father, but it wasn't until I got older that I realized the dynamic in the relationship we had and why he was the way he was.
Exactly.
And then now we are just great, and so he was one that wasn't really well with kids, but as we got older, again, we built a really, really good relationship.
Well, we talked about that in the last episode about the blueprint of fathering, right? Most dads were taught to be the provider and the protector and this and that, and there's not much room for that nurturing part for a lot of dads because that's not what they knew. Like again, we talked about it last episode about they're either the soldier, they're the the worker, the this, the that, and they came home and the mom was a nurturer, the one who took care of things. Even though, like you said, your mom still worked probably as much as your dad did, but she did everything else.
Yeah.
But it's good to see that, and maybe we could touch base on a future episode of how that dynamic changed, because a lot of people hold resentment towards their dads when they get older because, oh, my dad was never there, I never felt loved, like you said, and stuff like that. And now you guys have a great relationship, so that'll be cool to kind of to touch into that at some point down the road. But that's something that I feel that moms really have. My mom, of course, as a single mom, really kind of held that role down as much as possible. But as dads, we have to find that balance too, and that changing the blueprint. And I think it is. I see you as a father because you work hard, and then now, but you still have time for your kids. You still are there for your kids. You're still down on your, like, at their level type of thing. And I'm not sure how it's going to sound in post, but you guys can hear the kids running around.
I mean, yeah, this is what this is,
This
right?
is life, yeah. My 2 boys are here, your 2 boys are there, and you get 4 boys together. It is a ruckus. It's a riot. So okay, you grew up, you moved from Mexico up here to the United States to New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about your sports background, because I know you have a pretty extensive soccer background and some pretty decent opportunities you had as a young lad and all that fun stuff. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't actually get into organized sports until I was a little older. So my mom, what she did is she used to clean houses, and she cleaned houses for this family. I don't know their name, but I know Phil was his name and David was his son, and they lived in Tanawan, and they just absolutely adored my mom, and they loved me because I would always go over there whenever I was on break or summer or whatever, and I would hang out there while she would clean the house. And so David and I built a really good relationship as kids. We were friends, and so Phil was a great example, an early example too, because one thing that I hope this doesn't get too dark, but I just want to touch on it real quick.
This is a raw podcast.
Okay, so one thing that I grew up seeing, because my mom cleaned houses and she didn't speak English very well, there's a lot of racism towards my mom, and because I understood, they're making comments and things as though I don't know what they're saying, and so at a young age, I was put in a place where I had to make decisions where, am I just going to allow this to go on, or am I going to say something? And so that's kind of what the norm was anytime we went into clean a house. So this was, my shields, my guards were up. And so when I met David and Phil, they were just the complete opposite of what I had seen my mom go through. They were very loving. When I say they adored my mom, they adored my mom. Like, they were so grateful, even though they paid her to clean their house, and they paid her well, they were so grateful that she would be there, to the point where at the time my mom didn't drive, so she rode the bus. They would go and pick us up from our house and then take us and then drop us off. But so my early opportunities came through him. David really wanted us to play sports together. And so they signed me up for AYSO.
Yep.
We played at a park up there off of like Wyoming Indian School area. And then I also played, that's where I got my early exposure to baseball, T-ball.
Yeah. And
it was because of David and Phil. Phil wanted me to play with his son because we were friends,
Exactly.
So that was cool. But after that, you get to a point where you can't do that forever. You can't allow someone to just, take care of your kid or put you in sports forever. I didn't do organized sports for a while. It was more so just at the community center, at recess. And, I'm a firm believer that a lot of the talent a lot of the talent in these sports are probably ones you don't see.
Exactly.
And so TikTok and all these things are really great because now you get to see like the freestyle soccer players.
Exactly.
They're not going to make the pros, but they're some of the best dribblers, and the females are amazing. They're some of the best dribblers that I've ever seen.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting that I've always felt like that. And so growing up, it was always, all right, prove it now. There was no scoreboard. There was no, we won the last one. This is a best out of 3 series. No, it was recess or it was at the community center.
Yeah.
All right, doesn't matter what you did yesterday. What are you doing today?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so it was prove it now, prove it every day. And so I did that for years, and up until probably I was like 8, 9. That's when I started getting back into organized sports, and then I started doing soccer. And then the team that we had down at we were the Barelas Tigers. The coach was undefeated. He hadn't lost the game, and so he had tied and all these things, but hadn't lost the game. So there was 2 groups. There was like first and second graders. Even up to third graders, but if you're good enough, you can play up. And then there was fourth and fifth graders.
Okay.
So it was the Beehivers were the younger team, and then you had just the older kids. I didn't play Beehivers. Right? I played older, and when I got to that level, it was good to see that I was able to keep up with all the kids. And then shortly after that, because I was just always playing sports, I was always picking things up really quickly. I was able to become one of the better players on the team. I was always, again, from that younger age where I had to make that decision. Do I stand up for my mom or do I not let it go?
Exactly.
I kind of build like leadership.
Okay.
And so I quickly became a captain. I was a co-captain with another friend of mine. And that's kind of how I got introduced to team sports. And a lot of what I learned, so the reason why I coach now and the reason why the way I coach is because of that coach that I had. His name is Bobby. And almost every lesson I've learned from a coach has come from him. So even though I've had plenty of coaches growing up, all the way almost to the collegiate level, didn't matter. Everything that I learned came from Bobby.
Okay.
And everything that sticks with me came from Bobby. Oh, of course, there's things that I picked up along the way, but it was just kind of brushing up or retouching on something that Bobby had already taught us. And he, knowing where we grew up was a gang area. It wasn't just about, I'm going to coach you guys on the field, but I'm going to teach you how to be young men outside.
Yeah, coach.
You know?
And then that's an important thing. Going back on, and we'll touch on Coach Bobby and that whole mindset, but the relationship with David and Phil, right, that you had growing up. Would you say Phil showed you maybe another fatherly example for your life at a young age? Not saying he was your dad, but just that idea of a dad, like, oh, I want to do whatever I can for my son to achieve or to be this or to hang out with his buddies or whatever the case is. And so, do you feel that Phil was? Do you feel that Phil was maybe a fatherhood example to you as well, that might have given you some of those tidbits as you are a dad now? And then, of course, we'll talk about Coach Bobby and moving forward with that. But do you feel like that helped or had any part of your fatherhood experience as a son and now as a dad?
Well, looking back on it, yeah, definitely. At the time, no.
Yeah.
Because, again, I was very guarded. And even though I looked at him like he's a great father for his son, right? It's so nice that this stranger is doing something nice for me. But when I was growing up, my fatherly example was my older brother.
Yeah.
You know, and we're 7 years apart. So by the time, you know, he was grown, you know. By the time you start remembering things when you're 5 years old.
Exactly,
So he's already 12 years old. So he's already teaching me how to navigate through the hood and kind of like, you know, there's things he taught me that I went kind of away from because I didn't believe in him, right? But for the most part, he was just kind of like a very fatherly protector and like a brother for sure. But
Exactly.
he gave me a lot of examples. So growing up, I looked at the things he did, and he was more of like my role model. So if there's like if you want to compare that to a father figure, because I didn't look at him like a brother. Like he was a brother, but he was also like a protector. So it was almost like he was between a father and a brother.
I see.
And that's how I looked at him. So it almost felt wrong to view anyone else as a father figure, if it was outside of my stepdad or
Your brother.
or my brother. Yeah. So at the time, I saw him as a good dad for his son, but you know, for me, it was them. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, definitely now looking back on it, for sure, you know, there was something that as a kid I was probably like yearning for, and this man was able to step in at an early age, show me, hey, there's things that are different, and all these examples, I feel are put in our path for reasons, you know, because again, growing up in the hood, growing up with someone who wasn't really present when I was younger, it could have been very easy for me to stray away from where I am now. So I think God put these people in my life in order for them to leave that imprint in me. It's almost like, have you seen the movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
You know how those core memories?
We just watched it, and I tell people, I was like, oh, when's the second? There needs to be a second one, because like, oh, what does this mean? And first of all, we talked about this before in the podcast. Movies, any cartoon, if they say family or dad, I'm bawling. Like, it's just like, ever since I had kids, I'm the biggest like softie. And we were watching Inside Out, and I was like, I probably should step out because I know I'm gonna start crying. Like, I know, such a great movie. But yeah, go back to your point. But yeah, Inside Out, amazing movie. One of my clients' son, they couldn't say my name, so they called me Joy. And they're like, Joy from Inside Out. I was like, I'll take it. But yeah, go ahead.
So I look at it like that, for my life at least, is I have these core memories, and Phil is a part of that core memory.
Yeah.
You know, Phil and David are a part of that, because I can remember their layout of their house.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm a kid. I'm 5 years
Exactly.
old or something. So this is T-ball, so I'm 5, right? I remember the layout of their house. I remember their backyard. I remember we used to play with Megazords because he was in a Power Rangers.
Yeah.
I remember going to what was it, Grandma's restaurant, remember?
Oh,
And getting these the burritos, the smothered burritos, you know. So they would do that. So my mom would clean. They're like, "Is it okay if we take him here?" Yeah, he was actually one of the people that taught me how to swim. He would take me to sports and wellness up there.
Point?
Yeah, High Point. And no, not High Point.
Yeah, the one on Riverside.
Yeah,
Riverside.
No. The one that's all the way up on Paseo and
Course?
or
By
Albuquerque Academy.
Oh yeah, so that's San Antonio.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Del Norte.
Del Norte, thank you. So he would go there before sports and wellness, and he would like teach me how to swim and do all this and that. So they would, even when my mom was cleaning, after a while I wasn't there. I was out with them. I mean, he took me to ride ATVs. We did all these things because me and his son were friends, and so. That's definitely a core memory for me. Like, he's a core figure in my life for sure.
Well, and then that's a good example for what Phil is and his dad and his men out there, right? Like, there's a lot of uncles out there. There's a lot of just guys who are just floating around the world with no kids because they either just haven't had the opportunity or don't want kids, and that's fine. But the male fatherly influence to kids, I mean, you have your big brother, big sisters organizations. You have your YMCA. You have coaching opportunities. For kids that even at the time, because I had the same thing. I grew up without a dad, but I had father figures all around. But I was like, well, that's not my dad. That was the whole thing. Like, well, thank you, but you're not my dad type of thing. What was it? You're not my dad.
You're not my dad. I just sent that one yesterday too. That's funny.
But and I didn't have like resentment against them. It's just like in the back of my mind, like, it was like, oh, well, they're just being nice, or they're just being this, or they're whatever. And I remember having friends growing up in Maryland and even here where, since I was a friend to them, like the dad kind of like, oh, you're part of the family, you're part of this, you're part of that. And it was cool. And at the time, like you said, you were so guarded to like not really see it for what it is. But now as we grow older, the examples that they left on us makes us not just a better dad to our kids, but just a better man, a better human to kids around. And I tell men, especially young men, I was at the park taking pictures of these owls there on the west side, and we got to go one of these days. And there was a kid, he actually listened to the podcast. I think his name is either Giovanni, I forget his name. We're friends on Instagram, but his little girl had been 1 or 2, and he's pushing her in the swing, and it's just him and his baby girl. And I'm watching this experience. And of course you could say, oh, this kid, he's young, he's this, and he's probably, why is he in this situation? It doesn't matter. He's there with this kid. He's like present with this kid. And if you're present with any kid, if you're a dad or not, that right there, like you said, inside out, becomes a core memory. And it's a core memory that is good because we have a lot of things in our life that really kind of pulls us from the opposite. You could have focused on the people who are racist towards you and your mom. And sure, you probably have that in there. And I felt the racism before. I felt the racism within my own race because I'm half black, half Mexican. So I wasn't fully black and I wasn't fully Mexican. And so I always felt that kind of tug of war. I said, well, I guess I'm just going to be me. And then they used to call myself a Blaxican. And my grandpa said, mijo, the only Mexican in your family is your grandma. Did my ancestry, I'm more Mexican than anything else. So it's funny when it like all comes around this full circle. But when it comes to the example of being a man and being a dad to everyone, like, sure, you have your responsibility to your kids, but if you're out and about at the park, I mean, we have our little dad park group, and we're kind of like the dad park group, and we are there for every kid. If a kid's hurt, if a kid needs this, kid needs that, we're not like, oh, it's not my kid, whatever. We want to make sure that we're there because that example holds so much weight. You can see that in your life that you look back now, the example of that Phil gave you is like, hey, this is how you should be treated. This is how you deserve to be treated. And yeah, you were like, oh, you're not my dad. But at the same time, you're the auxiliary son to him. You're his son's best friend. You're this, and he wanted to do everything. And in his mind, he probably like, I'm not going to try to step in to be your dad, but I'm going to be the best father figure I can to show you that, hey, you could be above reproach when it comes to in a sense, the blueprint of fathering that has been happening for eons that we talked about last episode. So I think that's a really, really cool point to hear about Phil and of course about your brother too, because that's a lot of things. A lot of people don't realize that older siblings play a pretty big role because they've been through it, right? And you probably don't know all the ins and outs of what your brother went through at his age, but what he went through, he is showing you and and letting you know, hey, okay, let's do this a little different, or let's go this way instead of go that way, type of thing, and they kind of go from there.
Well, that's definitely a lot like the part that no one ever really thinks about as a kid. Like I think about it now, but when I was a kid, I did not think about like, I did not think about like what the shoes he had to put on or the hats he had to wear at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear about like a lot of these celebrities who lose their childhood and what it does to them, right?
Yeah.
How nuts they go. I think there's a lot of stuff in the background still going on. It's not just that, right? That messes them up, but you never hear about the unsung heroes, the ones that aren't famous, the ones that don't have a platform. So you never hear about that. And it wasn't until I got older that I started to realize like he was thrown in that role, and I'm sure he didn't want to be, but he sees his little brother looking for something like this, and he was thrown into that role for me, and he did it for me, you know. So it was for love, and I never looked back. I never looked at the time about what he had to go through, and now that I look back on it, you know, because he was there when like he was conscious. He knew it whenever my parents split. He knew he was there for the trauma of us leaving and all that stuff. And also,
Going to a different country.
Yeah, for him, that's probably scary because my mom says she was scared. She didn't speak the language, and here she's going to a new country, and she wants a fresh start. You know, the American dream, all that stuff. And you know, you have two boys that you got to look out for. So it's like my mom made mistakes along the way because she was always trying to do what she felt was better for us or what other people were telling her were better for us. You know, but she had to make those mistakes. In my brother's case, he had to see those mistakes. He had to see my mom stumble. He remembers those things.
Yeah.
So you know, I have a lot of respect for him because I can't even imagine the things that he had to deal with on top of being a strong figure for me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's why for me, he was always a very crucial role model like he was just a crucial person in my life for sure, you know?
And that's something that we have to really focus on is as men. I mean, I was the eldest, and sure, all my siblings were all pretty close in age. We're all a year apart, and so we were all kind of squished together. But I still felt like I had that responsibility of, man, I have to do this. And it wasn't really like my mom said, Troy, I need you to be this person, or I need you to be, but I just felt like I had to because I was the man in the sense of the house.
And that's an attribute to your mom because of how your mom is raising you. The fact that she doesn't have to tell you that, you already know, like, we're a family. And I'm sure your mom taught you that, right? Because if you didn't have like a father in your life, it's like, this is us. We got to take care of each other. You know,
Yeah.
So for you to understand kind of like what your mom wants to, the morals your mom wants to instill in you guys, you're like, okay, as a brother, I think it might be my job to make sure that I'm helping when she's not around, making sure they stay the path or they stay the course, you know?
Exactly.
But so I give a lot of credit to that to your mom, you know, because she was able to instill that in you to like kind of hand you the ball, run with it.
Well, and that's something, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole with like, I felt like how my mom raised us, especially with Corey and I. She was very tough with us. Not as tough with the girls, and I understood why at the end. And of course, they're, like you said, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, this is some malarkey, man. What is going on here?
Yeah.
But you look back at it and you're like, okay, she was trying to teach us examples, if it was indirect or directly, so we could be better down the road, just like your brother did, and it seemed just like Phil did as well. So let's pivot to your coach, Bobby. And I think it's very important for coaches to realize that, I mean, I've coached AAU basketball. I haven't coached my sons yet. Actually, I'm going to be an assistant coach on the soccer team
There you go.
coming up, so I'm excited for this episode to get some pointers. But the idea of coaching the sport versus coaching life and how those kind of intertwine. Tell us about how Coach Bobby left that example on you in your life, not just as a coach now and as a father, and we'll talk about the dynamics between you coaching your sons.
Well, his philosophy was great, man, because it was like you give 110% on everything and anything you do. If you're going to commit to something, so that's something, if I commit to something, I got to do it. I committed to it. And that comes from him. If you're going to commit to something, you got to follow through.
Yeah.
Because as men, especially out here, you'd say all we have is our word. So what we promise, we have to follow through on. The minute that goes, that's our currency. The minute our word goes, then no one wants to deal with us. And so at a young age, we were able to learn, okay, if we're gonna apply ourselves at something, we gotta apply ourselves 110%. And the fact that we already had, like, everyone had a leg up on us because of where we grew up. Everyone, he brought these, he let us know how the world viewed us without crossing any political boundaries. You know what I mean? But he let them know, like, hey, people don't want you to succeed. People don't want you to do this. He's like, but it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
You guys need to do it. You guys can prove everyone wrong. You know, it's what you guys do here and how you act. So if you guys get mad and you want to get upset, you want to fight, they expect you to do that. Now, are we gonna give them that? Are you gonna give them that, or are you gonna do something else? Are you gonna prove that you're something more than just what they expect you to be?
Exactly.
And so, we're talking soccer here.
Yeah.
These are the lessons that we're learning on top of being an undefeated team, winning championships. You know, so those are things that I felt like he did very, very well. And that's why I say a lot of what he, if not everything he taught me, stuck with me, because that's exactly how I coach. He had to deal with two home kids or kids who didn't have fathers and stuff.
Exactly.
And he was that role model for them, right? He was able to go and he was hard on us, but we always knew that it came from a place of love. Like, he had a really, really well balance.
Yeah.
Like, he would be hard on us, but then he would find a good way to balance it out, to let us know, hey, there's nothing personal, it's just all this, but it's going to make you guys better, and here's why I'm doing it.
Exactly.
And so those are the things that I learned at a young age through Bobby, and it was, I think that was a little hard on my brother, because Bobby and him were essentially the same age.
Okay.
You know, and I was spending a lot more time with Bobby, because at the time my brother was wanting to be with his friends, and here's a guy that's maybe a couple years older, because I think my brother was still like in high school, and Bobby was probably out of high school, but I was spending all this time with him, and I was learning all these lessons from him. So I think, because every time I talked to him about Bobby, he didn't really want to hear it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Bobby was also around the center, so he didn't mesh with a lot of the people there, because he was like the only soccer dude there, and everyone, Barelas was a basketball thing, right?
Yep.
So he didn't really mesh with a lot of the other older people, as I would notice whenever we do like open gym and stuff. He'd never really go. He was a firefighter, so he was kind of busy with that stuff, but I could see it. So I don't know if you know, my brother wasn't too keen on him because of that stuff, because my brother was in the basketball world, or maybe he just didn't like that. You know, I was learning a lot of lessons from this guy who's not that much older than him. That's not family, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But it definitely was crucial, and I think that's kind of where I got my taste for wanting to coach, because it's not just about coaching on the field, but like, given I live in the West Mesa district, Alyssa comes from the Cueva district, so she can tell me all about how they look at us over here, right? And I'm an Albuquerque High guy, so for me it's hard to you know, be in West Mesa, but I'm a loyal person, and West Mesa gave me the opportunity. Exactly. I sit on the board with them, so I'm a board member there. I'm able to coach, you know, I volunteer, all these other things, and I want to change the way that they look at us. I want to change the perception of West Mesa, and that's always been my goal. So Alyssa letting me know how they look at us, what they expect of us, has helped me in coaching, because the minute my kids start to show those kind of you know, actions or examples or whatever, I immediately check it, because I'm like, no, we're better than this.
Exactly.
We're better than who's to say who we are and what we aren't.
Exactly.
We determine what we are and what we aren't, not the outside world.
Exactly.
So let them talk whatever they want, and trust me, they will be thrown off when we show up completely different or whatever than they expect us to be. Exactly. That immediately is going to throw them off. And so that's kind of what I teach my kids is you give 110% always, you know, because you're not doing it for me, you're doing it for the people around you. I tell them I want 12 leaders. I want one captain, two captains. I want 12 leaders out there. You guys hold each other accountable. Exactly. Because they'll play hard for each other. They might not play hard for me, because I'm a father or an adult person, right? But they'll play hard for each other. And so, you know, I try to make sure that they keep their head up. I don't like showboating. That's something I learned with Bobby. We don't showboat. Yeah. So anytime we scored a goal, there was no celebration. There's no Ronaldo sues or nothing like that. It was, you score a goal, all right, cool. You run back to the half line, get ready for the next one. Yeah. 0-0. And so even to this day, like, baseball is a very showboaty thing. I don't let my kids showboat. You don't let them gritty on the home plate? I mean, no. They score and they're on their way back to the dugout, and I'm over here talking to my runners. They'll squeeze one in, you know, but if I catch it, I'm like, no, we don't do that. We do not do that, because to me, it's going to be worse. And again, you're giving them the satisfaction of showboating, getting a big head, and then what happens if they come back and they beat you? Now look how silly we look. Yeah. Right? So not only did we lose, but we embarrassed ourselves. Exactly. Well, there's a lot of factions when it comes to, because I remember, again, growing, when I moved here, I went to Highland High School, and then everyone was like, oh, you're this. I remember we did a cross-country meet, and
And I remember being there, and the academy kids like, "Oh, you're gonna be watching our cars in 10 years," stuff like that. I'm like, "Oh no, okay." But anyway, with that being said, it's
thick on the races.
oh, exactly. And I remember, I mean, I won state championships in basketball. I've done a lot of different things, but I remember just hearing that, like, I remember we walked in the gym one time, like, oh, they have 4 black guys. They're probably pretty good. And sure, we were pretty good, but it was that whole stigma, that whole this, that whole that. And it got to the point where you're like, you have that chip on your shoulder, but you don't show that chip. You can't show that chip. You have to be like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can in order to be better for ourselves. I look at Camden's soccer team. They have a AYSO. They have a really good team, amazing coaches and everything. And in the end of half season, they lost 3-2 to this team. Half the players are out, but no excuses, right? They still should have had a chance to win. They had this kid that was like, "Are you really your age?" And he would kick because for whatever reason there was no direct kicks on free kicks, unless it was to at the halfway line to start middle of the game or after a goal.
Oh, you kick it on a goal kick?
And so yeah,
I knew a kid that did that too. Yeah,
and he just booted 2 of them, and you're just like, okay, they scored 1 true goal, and then the other 2 were just like the keeper wasn't expecting that. But that's here nor there. So we played them again, the last game of the season, and I remember the coach saying, "Go out there, just play your game," like the whole rah stuff. But I remember seeing these kids, and they went together like, they're not passing the halfway line. These and there was a point where I saw that they weren't being cocky, they were being confident, and they were saying, if we work together, this team is not going to pass the halfway line. The entire game, they passed the halfway line twice. And one was just like kind of a ricochet ball, then the kid was able to get around them. And the other one was, okay, let me just kick it ahead at the start of the game. And one of the kids ran to it, touched it. And these kids were so locked in. And like you said, it wasn't like one leader, let me lead. It was all of us together. Let's figure this out. And the coaches were sitting there like, these kids are playing possessed, because they came within each other and said, we're not going to allow this to happen. We're not going to allow this to happen again. And they felt that taste of loss because they were kids who were doing the celebrations, doing this and doing that. And I was just a parent on the sidelines. Like, Camden scored his goal and he was pumped up. He wasn't doing anything crazy, but these kids were gritty and all kinds of stuff because they were winning like 15-1, 15-2. Then they finally lost. And I saw the defeat in these kids' eyes, and they're sad and they're upset. I'm like, everyone's like, keep your head up, you're okay. And then what they could have won in there is like, let's beat this team, dance all over them. There was not once. It was score a goal, go back. And this was not from the coaches that I saw. These kids got together and said, this is how we're going to play. This is how it's going to happen. And it happened. We're sitting there like, what is going on here? And they were talking, yelling at each other. And even the ref said, hey, this is a 10U team. They said, I ref 14U, like club level. So the way these kids play together, and like you're probably your team, if they stick together, no one's going to beat them. When they turn middle school, high school, no one's going to beat this team. And of course, AYSO, this team's so good, they're beating everyone, you got to break them up. Like, that's unfair. And the coach is like, that's not our problem that our district is full of talent, but they're trying to split up the team or whatnot. But with what you were saying is, if you teach these kids to be an example of who they are, the example of not just the crest in front of them, but the last name behind them, right? Then it shows them not just for a soccer game or a baseball game, or it shows them a life example of, hey, like, you do your job and you succeed. Great. You fail, you congratulate the other team, you lick your wounds, and then you be better the next time. But you don't need to dance and prance and do all this all over everyone. I mean, look at every champion, right? You don't see, like, Travis Kelce used to have the best end zone dances for tight ends. His 2 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl runs, you don't see him dancing. You don't see anyone doing all these funky stuff, and that's cool, like, sure. But it just shows that, like, there's a mental switch when you're like, I'm here to play my best, to be my best, not just for myself, but for my teammates. And I think how you're coaching that to these kids at a young age is a pretty important thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, again, they look at us in a certain light, and I hate when people think that they can put their finger on who you are, just based off where you are raised. And so for me, I'm like, no, we're gonna be us. We're gonna be different. We're not gonna be this. This is not who we are. This is what West Mesa in the past has been.
Yeah.
This isn't who we are now. So we're gonna be us. We're gonna have our own identity, and that's how we're gonna present ourselves. And you're right. I've had these boys for over a year, and like 4 seasons, something like that. And it started off rough. We were the Rugrats, in the division, and we were fortunate enough to place third in our first season. And then we kept them together. We worked hard, and then we were the best team. We went undefeated, right? And then again, we were the best team the following season. We ended up losing the championship, but we were the best team. And that championship, credit to the other team, because they outplayed us.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh man, if we would have done this, they outplayed us.
Yeah.
They did. It was a really good game. It was really close. We lost by 1 run, but they outplayed us. And it's one of those things where like not only do you play to the level of your competition, but you also, growing up with all these kids, I'm a firm believer as a board member that the better that the kids are in our league, the better that these kids are going to be when they hit all-stars.
Exactly.
And they play together. So I'm all for, with these other coaches and these other kids. So I make friends with every other other kids on the
should.
Yeah. Bobby, that was the one thing that I do differently than Bobby does, right? Because Bobby, there was coaches he couldn't stand, there was players he couldn't stand, and he just wanted us to beat him. And right, we had that, we're like, oh, we got to beat this team. This team's our rival. We got to beat him. But at the end of the day, like, I had kids on the field that I would talk to, I would play with, whenever there was a time called or someone was hurt or something, things like that, because I also am a board member, so I'm trying to build a camaraderie between teams to show like, hey, yeah, we might be against each other now, but we're all under the West Mesa banner, and at one point, we're all going to play together.
Exactly.
So let's make sure that we know how to do that and make sure that we don't create a dislike or a hate for one another. This is a sport of fun. We're here to play fun. So we can do that and be friends. And it works out because like the team that we ended up losing to is now my son's football coach. And he plays with a couple of the kids that played on that team. So it's good to see that they still have that, right? Because if I was bitter or whatever, I couldn't allow him to coach my son. Oh, they beat us, right? Or his son wouldn't like my kid because he's my kid, but there's none of that from either of us. So it works out really good because now look at the opportunities that he's able to have. So I don't know. There's things that you take and there's things you don't. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't think there's any excuses. We all have bad situations, but it's kind of like, are you crying over spoiled milk, or are you looking at the cup half empty as opposed to like half full? Like, how are you looking at it?
Exactly.
And I've always been like a half full guy. And my mom always says like, I don't know where you get your thinking from because, she knows that she didn't teach me that. My brother didn't teach me that. And those are things that just where I grew up and my life experiences that I learned. I've had so many things that could turn me into this bitter or angry person, but instead I chose to turn to God. And I tell people the same thing. He's like, you guys think it's all me. It's God leading the way for me. Like God what do I have to worry about if I know that I have the best backing? You know what I mean? Like the best protector. What do I have to worry about? I have nothing to worry about. If I'm worried about it, it's silly because at the end of the day, it's out of my hands anyway.
Exactly.
So I've always had that mentality with everything that's happened in my life and everything. And so the best thing that I've gotten, not just from like coaching kids or like being a father or anything, but having friends who are older than me to say, you're my role model because of how you carry yourself, the things that you do. It's like, I know, and it's always the same thing. I know you're older than me, but you're my role model. And for me, that's just as great as having your son tell you that they're your role model, especially if they're close friends, because it's like, man, if I can impact this person's life, and I always attribute it to religion. I always attribute it to God. I'm like, the reason I am the way I am is because of God.
Yeah. So
anytime anyone tells me that gives me an opportunity to almost in a way preach. It's like, well, this is why I am the way I am. Like, you can do this too. You know what I mean? Like, have you gone to church? Like, what's your background? So then I can start those conversations. I'm not like a Bible thumper who just pushes it down people's throats, right? But if they open up the opportunity for discussion, I'll discuss it with them, and if they're like, no, I'm like, all right, no problem.
Yeah.
And so I have friends who are atheists and friends who are like into crystals and stuff like that. And we have great relationships because I'm not the type that's going to force it down your throat. But if you ask me questions, I'm going to answer you based off biblical knowledge. You know what I mean? So I believe that we live in a world now where that can still exist, even though society wants us to, be divided.
Exactly.
But we can definitely, depending on how you look at life, we can still coexist with one another with love and still have completely different beliefs. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and what you were saying about the whole, like, your example as a coach, as a dad, as a man, many eyes are on it. The idea of, oh, West Mesa, they're this, they're that, the West Mesa is the western part of Albuquerque. For people who don't know, southwest-ish, southwest northwest, kind of on that cusp.
Yeah.
And it's, in a sense, for the longest time, kind of lower income, etc. part of town, but still great family values. Very rich Hispanic part of town. In a lot of ways, in the southwest part of West Mesa, because there's a line that draws. I don't know exactly where, because Rio Grande, now Trisco Heritage, kind of crept into that more of the southwest area.
Yeah, Rio Grande expanded more north.
Yeah,
because south was taken by Trisco Heritage.
Trisco, and
that's why Rio Grande is now like a 4A school, or 2A school because of that.
Yeah, and so with that being said, people always like look at, oh, well, they're just this, like you said. But as a male example, and I tell my kids this, congratulate everyone. Even if you lose, you have to be above reproach. Of course, our emotions get the best of us when our sports teams win, lose, this and that. But you have to be better than reproach, not because of what people are looking at you, but because who you are and who you perceive yourself to be. People are looking at you in a way to say, oh, wow, like that's different. Like like your mom said, where did you get this from? Well, your brother wasn't this way. Your stepdad wasn't this way. And it was God and the examples he put in front of you, the Phils of your life, the Bobbies of your life, that showed you these little tidbits of like how you should be above reproach when it comes to coaching, being a dad, being a man, being just a friend, even in competition, right? Like you're competing against other teams within your district that okay, even if they were a team from La Cueva or Sandia High School, if I still have the same mentality, same attitude, my kids are watching this and they're seeing that, okay, sure, there's rivalries, there's healthy rivalries, there's teams that help you push to be better, but that's it. They're still humans, they're still kids, they're still sons, they're still daughters, they're still this. And so by doing that and being above reproach when it comes to your coaching style, and having that respect and that camaraderie when it comes to other teams. I mean, AAU, because basketball, every sport, parents are the worst. Parents are the absolute worst. They think their kids are...
YAFL has to sign, because in YAFL we have to sign parent contracts.
Yeah.
Because it's so bad.
It's horrible. And I remember AAU, I'm sitting there listening to these parents. I'm like, guys, stop it. These are kids. They're 12 and 13. And the other team, it's not unfair for have a kid on the other team. He's not that good. Let him shoot. They're kids. You're trying to snatch their confidence by trying to help your kid out. No, let the competition play itself out. And then at the end of the day, shake hands, be respectful. So on that pivot, when it comes to you coach your sons at any sports?
Yeah, I coach them basketball. I'm going to help out assistant coaching there. Coach them at baseball. I'm the head coach for baseball. And I got asked to help coach with football, but I couldn't because we put him in club baseball, which I'm an assistant coach for his club baseball team.
So when it comes to coaching your sons versus the other players, do you feel that you have a different expectation? Like, I know my kids like the back of my hand, so my expectations are a little bit higher for them to succeed higher. My expectations for them to run faster or go further than the other kids. And then when it comes down to coaching your sons versus coaching everyone else, is it standard across the board, or do you feel like you push your kids more just because you have a deeper knowledge of who?
No, I push my kids more, and it's always going to be like that. Anyone that tells you they don't, I think and this could be, every situation is going to be different, but any parent that says that they don't push their kid more, they treat them just like everyone else, I would say that hasn't invested a lot of time in their kid, or doesn't understand the effects of coaching. And the reason why I'll say that is because I was, in every sport I played, I was the best. I wanted to be the best, and that's what I strive for. I worked harder. So those stories you hear about Kobe getting in earlier and staying later, that was me. I was there before practice. I was there after practice. I even do it now to the point where Alyssa, she has to say, we got to go. I got to make dinner. After practice, we end at 7:30, and sometimes we end at 8. And there was one of the practices that we were practicing, I stayed an hour and a half later to work with my son.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. So I put in the work, but going back to it, the reason why I put more, it's heavier on my son and I put more weight on him is because, and this is just, I don't know what you want to call it, but just natural. It's just naturally going to happen if you coach your son. I said, look, man, I need you to be a leader out here. You need to be the leader of this team. And he's like, well, Dad, I don't want to. And I was like, you got to understand something. You're my son. automatically you're thrusted into that role because they look at you, though you're the coach's kid. So even if you're not the best, you have to be the most vocal and you have to be the one that leads this team. You're going to be the one that's going to reel this team in when they need to be reeled in. And that's already, that weight's been put on you just because of who you are. I was like, I'm sorry, but you being my son, the rest of the kids are going to look to you for guidance. That's just the way it is. And so I'm harder on him. I'm harder on both of them because I know that kids are looking at them in that light. And I can hear the kids talking. Oh, Noah's the best at this. Noah's the best at that. Oh, King can hit this. He's the best this. And so I don't care about if they're the best or they do that. I don't care about that. What I care about is effort and how you present yourself and the example you are for a team. Yeah, I'm a team sports player. So how are you helping out the team? Don't you hinder the team. You know what I mean? Help the team. So at the same time, my son also feels, this is the dynamic of being a coach and a father, my son also feels that he can throw a tantrum because I'm his dad. So at that point is when he looks at me as a dad, he throws a tantrum. And I immediately stop it. Immediately. Because, again, they're looking to you to lead. If you're going to drop your shoulders and your body language is going to change, everyone's body language is going to change. Yeah. But if you're locked in, geared in the whole time, regardless of what I'm saying, they're going to do that because you're the example. And then you will, like Camden was really close to him, then Camden will do it, and then Desmond will do it, and then Tina will do it because they all look to players for these examples. And so I'm definitely harder on him simply because I know that they're looking to him for guidance. And if he acts a certain way, they feel they can act that way. So if he's showboating, they feel they can showboat. So I am harder on him when it comes to that.
And that makes sense because if they're looking at like, oh, well, if he could get away with it, then I can too. Or if they look at him like, wow, he's going above and beyond. He's pushing harder. He's swinging the bat better. He's listening better. Then they look at you because kids, they follow examples, right? They follow they don't follow what we say, but they follow what they see. That's just kids across the board. And so with that being said, they look at that example and be like, okay, all right, I could see King or I could see Noah listening to coach because you're so coach, but they know in the back of their head that's their dad. But they say if you King or Noah throws a fit and you give into that, then they realize, oh well, there's no authority there. There's really like why do I have to?
Yeah, and it's no one gets special treatment.
No,
that's how no one gets. But you hear too many stories of like, oh, he's on the All-Star team because his dad is the coach. There's no special treatment on my team. Like I'm gonna treat them the way I'm gonna treat my kids the way I treat them in the sense of like, if I don't allow you to do it, I'm not gonna allow my son to do it.
Exactly.
Better believe that that's not the case. I'm not that kind of coach. So that was really big for me. Is like I'm not. And the other thing, and the reason why I work so hard on my son is because you know how parents are. Sometimes they're like, oh, you know what? That's a weird method. I've never seen that before. Does this guy even know how to coach? Does this guy even know? And I'm a winner, so I know how to win. And so my thing was, if I can show them that me working with my son, how good my son is based on him listening to the things that I'm teaching him, then they're going to feel better about, hey, well, look at his son. You know, all right, you know, if he wants to change my son's swing or he wants to change the way my son throws the ball or the way he's fielding, I trust him because look at his son. His son's a stud. And for them, it's like, oh, but I'm comfortable doing this. And I'm like, okay, do we want to learn how to do something the wrong way? Or do we want to learn that will give you like a 20 to 30% chance to talk about fielding? Do you want to be able to do that? That is maybe going to be a 20, 30% chance you stop the ball. You're doing it the wrong way. Or do you want to learn to do it the right way? You might stumble at first, but guess what? You're going to have like an 80, 90% chance of making sure that you make that stop.
Exactly.
Because you're doing it the right way. We're working on proper footwork. We're working on how to properly move your body to get the throw, to get the out, to get the double, whatever it is. And so those are the things that I teach my kids. It's like, you can do it wrong. I'm not a coach that's like, oh, they're already athletic. They're good. I'm just going to let them and I'm going to work with these kids. No. We're all doing the same drills. And if you're not doing it right, we're doing push-ups, we're doing planks, we're running because you're doing it wrong. And I don't want you to learn how to do it the wrong way.
Exactly.
This is the age where you have to learn how to do things the right way. So again, me as a team player, as a board member, I want to make sure that, let's say I wanted to stay in the division, and my kids were going to move up. Whoever's coaching them at a higher level, I want them to not have to worry about, dang, what did they do down there? These kids don't have any fundamentals. Exactly. Like, I should be working on this. The season's approaching, but yet I'm over here having to work on fundamentals because they weren't taught this at a younger age. So I believe that there's stages in how you coach, and these fundamentals should be taught young. And so I'm big on fundamentals because fundamentals will get you like 75% of the way there. and then you start working on other things that can get you over. And I feel like my methods work because, again, we had an undefeated season.
Yeah.
We won championship. You see what I'm saying? So the kids really gravitated towards me. Even the parents at the end where they're like, are you coaching? We'll follow you wherever you go. So when I did club, I told some parents, like, we'll follow you, and they came, so it's like, that makes me feel good as a coach because that makes them feel like, or makes me feel as though they trust me with their kids. And I love their kids like they're my own. When they're out there, they're my responsibility.
Exactly.
So when they throw a fit, I take the time to, what's going on outside? I'm not just about like, hey, you got to get it together. It's like, hey, what's going on? You seem distracted. What's going on? You want to sit down for a minute? Like, talk to me about it. It's okay. It's all right. And then the team's like, hey, let's pump them up. And then they start getting them going.
Yeah.
And then they see, okay, this is a safe space for me. I have my coach has my back. My teammates have my back. So they, whatever it is, I don't tell them, leave it at the door. I'll coach them that way. And then when they see the camaraderie, then they decide, I'm going to leave it at the door. Well, because I want to be there for my teammates. I want to be there for my coach. They're great,
Exactly. And we talked about in episode 3 with my buddy Ted about, instead of stopping, like, hey, suck it up, or don't be sad, don't be this, don't be that. It's like, okay, let's find the root of this. Let's find the root. And that's an important thing as a male, as a dad, as a coach, to kind of backtrack and help them work through whatever they need to work through, and then having a team, of course, rally about it. And that's a beautiful thing about team sports. I mean, I play so many team sports, and it's when one person's down, sure, like, I get frustrated with myself, and people are like, oh, Troy's mad. Like, oh, I'm upset with myself because knew I should have been better. I'm not mad at you, or this is not, wherever the case is, but I'm upset with myself. But when you see like a kid that's down and out, and instead of saying, hey, you're fine, get out there, do what you're supposed to do, like, hey, what's going on? Like, where did this start? Was it something happened at school, or something happened on the way here? Well, how can we help you out? And I think that's an important thing, that when fathering and coaching kind of coexist in a lot of ways. So a coach is a father, a coach is a mother if it's a female coach, in a lot of aspects, because we're not just telling these kids, hey, here's the fundamentals, which is important. Here's this. We're giving them so many different lessons on how to work as a team. So many different lessons on how to be better and push yourself to a level that you never thought you could even get to. And when you hit those peaks, to be excited. And when you hit those valleys sometimes, to be like, okay, how can we be better? And so when it comes to your coaching experience, do you feel like it's impacted your relationship with your sons outside of coaching in a positive way? You think it's changed at all? Just your relationship, just you solely with your boys outside of coaching, just your day-to-day life?
It's got its positive and its negatives. Like, anytime I want to work with Noah, after coaching him for over a year, anytime I want to work with Noah outside of the fields, it's just here at the house, he's like, Dad, we're not practicing, we're just hanging out. And so he looks at me as like, oh, is my coach telling me to practice? And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to do it as your coach. I'm trying to do it as your dad.
Yeah.
Like, as your father, I'm trying to tell you, hey, we got to work on these things, because right now, I was able to get him on a club team, a club traveling baseball team. He's playing, he just turned 7. And he's playing U10.
Yeah.
So he's playing up, and he made the team. Not only did he make the team, he's their starting second baseman. Oh, wow. You see what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, dude, we're at a point now where he doesn't have to play everyone. Now everyone play. You can get relegated to a different position.
Exactly.
I think you're a natural second baseman for sure. So if you don't work at it, you're going to get, someone's always going to be behind you trying to take your spot. And so he's working closely with another kid. And as a coach on that team, I'm working closely with that other kid. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So not only is Noah getting the coaching from the head coach, his name's Gabe, assistant coach Luis, and myself, he's also getting the Nico, which is the kid in the back, he's also getting the coaching from them. And so he has to understand, like, there's people that are going to be coming from your spot, man.
Yeah.
You're already playing up. That's amazing. But if you don't work at it, it can happen. And so when I tell them, hey, we got to work at this. Oh, we're not practicing. I'm like, no. As your father, I am concerned what it will do to your mental if you get replaced because you weren't putting in the work.
Exactly.
And because we're in football, basketball, and baseball right now all at once, and we go 7 days a week. So because we do that, I have to try to find a balance. So like I was telling you, Tuesdays and Sundays, we do baseball. He has practice Thursday, but he misses Thursday. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he does, and even Saturday, he does football. And then on Saturdays, we have basketball games. So after football practice, we rush over to a basketball game. See, so I'm trying to find the balance because I don't want him to get replaced. He's a starting running back for his football team.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. We had to waive him. The coach liked him. He's like, dude, he's athletic. Can he come play? So he's playing a year up. He's playing U8. He's just turned 7 or U9, whatever it is. But I don't want him to lose his spot there.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I'm trying to balance, but I'm also seeing what he's doing in practice because I'm at every single practice. So I'm seeing what he's doing in practice. So when we come home, I'm like, we need to work at this. We need to work at this.
Exactly.
But so there's the positives as a coach is that he does listen to me very well when we're on the field. But sometimes when we're at home, if he's just trying to chill and I try to work with him, he's like, Dad, we're not coaching. Yes. He's like, we're not coaching, Dad. We're not coaching. We're at home. And I'm like, dude, we're always working. We're always
Exactly.
And he has that mentality because he will come home and he'll want to play. He'll want to do something like that. Like he tells King all the time. King will be playing video games or watching his tablet. He's like, King, you keep playing video games and you keep sitting inside, you're gonna get fat. You got to go outside. You got to play sports is what he tells him. And so he's always like, Dad, can we practice pitching? Now he does it. Can we practice pitching? Can you be my catcher? I'm like, sure. I was like, I got you a net though, right? Like you can throw it in the net. Like, yeah. But he's like, no, I want you. So that's the positive is that I'm so involved that he can't even imagine doing this practice without me.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a blessing. Granted, I'm tired, right? I'm trying to balance out medications and stuff. I get exhausted, but I'm not going to say no. So Alyssa's like, dude, you got to find a balance because I see you're pushing it, man. You're exhausted. You do all these things. But I'm like, have you ever seen the movie Blended?
Yeah.
So they said something that stuck with me and has always stuck with me. Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler said that you got to show up for your kids 100% of the time, all the time. And I've always believed that. Like you have to 100% all the time because if I'm coaching kids, not just my son, but if I'm coaching kids that anytime you commit to something or you step on this field or whatever, you're giving 110%. And then me as a father, I'm not doing that. There's a problem there. And Kobe also said the same thing. Kobe's so influential, rest in peace. But he said that he would, if he's willing to go out there, and this is me too, I'm willing to go out there and play for my team because I still play soccer and stuff, basketball, on a rolled ankle, and I'm willing to tape the crap out of it just to play for my team. If I'm willing to give that effort, I got to give that effort at home. So it's like, if you're willing to have the flu and play, then when you come home, there's no excuse to rest because you're still doing the job at home. Yeah. So if you're going to play, you're going to also do your job at home, regardless of what the situation is. So that's kind of like my mentality. It's like, regardless of how tired I am or regardless of how my body's feeling, if my son is trying to work, who am I to deny him? Because that's all I'm preaching to him is, hey, we got to work. So if he's like, hey, let's go work. All right, man, let's go work, So.
And that's something very important as we get close to wrapping this up is the idea of it's not easy being a parent. It's not easy being a coach. It's not easy being a coach and a parent at the same time. And at the end of the day, it's very important. And kids need guidance. They need stern direction. They need, of course, the way you're doing it, there's empathy behind it too. It's okay, what's going on? What's the matter? Why are you feeling this way? But at the same time, it's like, okay, let's work through it. Not saying get over it. Not saying you're fine. You're okay. Let's work through this, and then let's be better than reproach.
Well, we have to set examples. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make on this point before we close. My team had a lot of kids that were in split homes, and for the people listening, it affects the kids.
It does.
It really does. But when they have when they feel they have a safe space or a stable environment, or they can build a camaraderie with the team, and the ball rolls downhill, right? It starts from the coaches, and I preach that. It makes it easier for them to, like I said, leave it at the door and forget about their problems for that 2 hours. I know, yes, I practice for 2 hours. I know people are like, oh, they're young. I don't care. I practice 2 hours. That's what we do. But for me, I was like Bobby. I was father figures to a lot of these kids. Yeah. They didn't. I can see it. I can see it because they'll go out of their way. Coach Alex give me hugs and stuff like that because I'm not like I'm not gonna like hug my kids or anything, right? But they'll come give me hugs and they want to make it a point to get me gifts and do this and everything's Coach Alex this and Coach Alex that. And hey, Coach Alex, can we play with your son? Can I come to your house? Like those kind of things. And I feel it's because of how I am, and I am because of what, like I said, because of Bobby. So when I look at these kids and they come from these split homes, if they're struggling at home, we don't understand what their home life is like. So you have to be a good example there, and you have to make them feel safe. That is our job as coaches, not only to coach them, but we have to make them feel safe, and we have to make them feel like, okay, I want to be here. A lot of times they're being forced into being there, And I'm like, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be, right? But I'm going to do everything I can to make you want to be here.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to make this fun. We're going to win, but I'm going to make this fun. But I'm also, there's a fine line. There's a balance. Like, okay, hey, it's not fun today because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. If we start doing what we're supposed to do, it's going to be fun again. And then it'll come. But again, it's those lessons where you have to be hard on them at times. And then you explain to them why, or then they'll understand why. Same thing like a father. So for a lot of these kids, I see them outside and they still, hey, Coach Alex, even their little brothers, hey, Coach Alex. And I can see what I am to these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was one example where at his football practice, one of my kids, he's on the football team as well. His dad was there, and for whatever reason, his dad wasn't throwing with him. So he's like, Coach Alex, will you play catch with me? Absolutely. And so I was teaching him with his dad standing 10 feet away. I was teaching his kid how to catch the ball. He's 5 years old. And again, he was like, did you teach King? I'm like, yeah, through King. King's 4. He can catch.
Yeah.
He's like, can you teach me? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I'm teaching him how to catch the ball. And I'm playing catch. And all the while, he's like, Dad, look, I can catch the ball now. Dad, look, Dad. And his dad didn't want to look. His dad would like look and then look away. No, Dad, you're not looking. Dad, you're not looking. And I felt almost uncomfortable because I'm like, these shouldn't be the lessons that I'm teaching.
Exactly.
I shouldn't be doing this. Like, I can't even imagine how he feels. He's probably upset at me right now. And I'm not even trying to overstep. But I love kids so much. And because I know you from baseball, you're my kid's little brother. And you're always there. We always get you snacks and stuff, right? We call you the bat boy, all these things. Yeah, if you need help, buddy, I'm going to help you.
Well, that shows the very important role of a dad and as a man, right? He might have his dad. You had your dad, you had your stepdad, you had your brother and stuff, but you had examples that sure weren't the dad, but those core memories happened. He caught the ball for the first time. And then when he gets older to play baseball, he's going to remember that. And so as males, especially as fathers and father figures, we have to be father figures across the board. We can't walk around life like, oh, well, that's not my kid, or, oh, well, that's not that. And then on the flip side, when it's our own kids, we have to meet them where they are, where they're excited. There's moments, I mean, I played soccer, Raul, you met Raul, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you met Raul, great guy. We play soccer with the kids, and these kids are running around, and we're like, man, we're going to beat these kids at soccer. And then afterwards, I'm like, my back hurts.
My knees.
My knee hurts because, I stubbed, I think I broke a toe by kicking a root because the ball kicked up, and I went to kick the ball, and it like skipped up, and I hit it was a nightmare.
Yeah, my toe's still broken.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's these little things that you look back like, sure, I could have just sat back on my phone or just talked or did whatever. But like, these are the moments where I want to be a part of. There's a kid named Alexander, that the boys' school, and he's really he's a Buffalo Bills fan, and how you would know it is because he wears Buffalo Bills stuff every day. This kid be wearing a Buffalo Bills scarf throughout the summertime. Like he's a Bills, and he knows sports. Oh, Bills Mafia, throw him through a table.
Yep.
He knows his sports through and through, and he has a wonderful dad. His dad is an amazing man, but his mom picks him up from school, and his mom's always out there throwing a football and stuff like that. But then the boys want to throw football, so then it's myself or Ted or Raul or one of the other dads there. We're always like, all right, let's go play catch. And so we're throwing the football, playing catch with not just our kids, but these other kids. And it's not saying like, oh, look at me, I'm that. No, it's showing them an example of what a man and what a father figure should be like, not taken away from what their dads are, but saying like, hey, no, we're all in this together. Yeah. And if the blueprint of fathering continues to change of we are all in this together as coaches, as dads, etc., this world will become a better place. And for these young little boys, they will grow up to say, you know what? It's okay if I'm different. It's okay if I stop and I'm tired. I'm not feeling well. I'm this, I'm that. You know what? It's okay if I push through it, because it doesn't just shows a lesson to me, but it shows a lesson to them. And that to me is one of the most important things of being a father. And then when you throw sports, because the majority of us love our sports. We all want our kids to be the number one this, number one that, number one this. But at the same time, they would never be that if it wasn't for us.
Yeah.
And so I could look at Ken to being as athletic as all get out. He's very fast. He's great, very good control on the soccer ball, all this other stuff. And he's learning. But if I'm sitting on the sidelines like, oh yeah, you're doing good, buddy, and I'm actually out there with them or helping them out at the best of my ability, then he will never really be pushed to be better or never get to a point, because as dads, we have to be hands-on. As coaches, we have to be hands-on.
And it makes it hard when you're a dad, like in football. when I see him doing something, I so badly want to say something, but I ask my parents not to intervene while I'm coaching them because it affects the kid. So I have to remind myself, hey, if I'm asking this of my parents, I can't be that parent, and I'm not. So I do practice what I preach.
It's tough.
It is because I'm
so hard.
But then again, I'm like, if I want to coach, volunteer, right?
Yeah.
So and I've decided not to. So I'm like, okay, no problem. But it's fine because I have all these other examples.
Yeah.
And so my thing is I take mental notes, and I'm like, all right, we'll work on that at home. We'll work on that at home. And again, I think my son gets his drive from me because again, I always stayed late and did all these things to where Alyssa's like, dude, we got to go. And it's not necessarily him. Like, he loves to be there, but it's me. I'm like, dude, you want to stay later? He's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, sweet. So he's like my little buddy. We're bad examples when it comes to that because all I have to do is like give him a look and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, we're staying late. And it's not until mom calls and say, where are you guys? He's got school tomorrow.
Exactly.
Like, there was one instance where I told you that hour and a half and I told him, I said, hey, he's like, is mom mad? I was like, yeah. I was like, don't worry. I was like, she's mad at me. I was like, I'm going to tell you something right now. I will bite the bullet and I will take responsibility any day of the week if it means putting in the extra work with you.
Exactly.
Trust me, I said it'll pay off. And just to make one more point is there are no bad kids. For the people that think, oh, these are bad kids, they're a product of their environment. There's no bad kids.
Exactly.
So when my kids, we had some kids that you can call bad kids, but it was because you never understand what they're going through. Some of them were just going through splits and the split home was fresh to them. And again, providing that safe space and then bringing the camaraderie and all that with the teammates, they start to improve. But it's all at a young age. Their minds are sponges. So I believe that there are no bad kids. It's a product of their environment. So depending on the things that they're going on in their life, if I can make an impact on one of those kids in a positive way, or even for 2 hours, if I can make him forget about the problems that are waiting for him at home, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, And so that's kind of like where I take my pride. It's not in how good my kids play. It's in the things that I see them doing, the examples that I see them doing. Like one of my proudest moments was when Noah took a shot of baseball to the face, cried, he was bleeding. He went out on the sideline. And then when we got the 3 outs, he was up at bat. He was still on the sideline. I didn't think he was going to come back. He came back. I was like, are you okay? He's like, it's my turn to hit. I don't want to let my teammates down. You see what I'm saying? So he came back in injured to get a hit, got a triple, goes back, he scores on the next one because our next hitter comes up and scores him. And then he goes back and sits down and then he's like working it. But then he goes back in the game on defense. So that was him. That wasn't me. Yeah. Those for me as a father, as a coach, are more of my prouder moments. When a kid comes back from something, even as a coach, when it's not my kid, that is where I know I'm doing my job because I'm like, you know what? When I first started with him, he would have been out of the game. There'd have been no bringing him back. But now that he comes back from this, I'm like, I'm making an impact. We can see that they're starting to understand, And so that's where I kind of get my pride from. Like my son the other day was playing basketball against a taller kid, great athlete. And this kid probably averaged like 24 points a game, right? Held him to 2 points. To the point where he was so upset that Noah was smothering him on defense, because I teach defense, smothering him, that the kid ended up trying to call himself out. His dad was a coach and said, no. He walked over to his mom on the sideline and they had left the gym. I told Alyssa, I was like, that's another one of my proud moments. I was like, my son kept his head in it, didn't fight with him, wasn't trash talking, just played defense and ran a kid out of the gym. And that kid wasn't mentally strong because speaking to other parents who have played with this kid, like, oh no, they encourage him to be like, if you want to win, you got to get me the ball. We're only good because of me. So they're encouraging him to be that way, and he's not mentally tough to handle when they're not winning.
Exactly.
And so proud moments like that.
But it's when it comes down to coaching in sports, there's a lot of people who are very anti-sports, the aspect of sports, etc. But they don't realize the life lessons that are learned when you're playing sports, when the whole idea of sportsmanship, to me, really, there's nothing else beyond sportsmanship. When another player is hurt or something happens, and the other team is the first one to rally to them to make sure it's okay. Sure, there's competitiveness. Everyone's being competitive. Everyone wants to win. But at the end of the day, if you can't uplift the next person, then really you're not really playing it right. Or if you feel like, well, I'm better than all these other kids, so I could do whatever I want, then you're not playing it right. And it seems like you're teaching your kids, not just your sons, but the kids on your team, and then there's an empathetic touch to it with like a lot of these kids, like you said, kids aren't bad kids. They just know what they know. And if we could be as coaches, if we could be as just a male figure around these kids, just a little bit of good, and then asking them that question like, hey, how can I help you? Or how can I be an assistance, or how can we help you get through this so you can be better, so you can be ready, so you can be prepared? Because as iron sharpens iron, we have to do that. We have to prepare each other. And as dads, we have to prepare each other, our kids, not just for the next baseball game, but for life in general, because life isn't easy. And so I feel like that's one of the main reasons why I wanted this topic to be touched on is the idea of coaching and fathering. It goes hand in hand. And the idea of coaching your own sons and knowing like that idea of like people, like you said, well, I just want to treat them all equally. You can't. I know with my kids, the reason I was like the first couple of games with Canada's soccer team, I was like, come on, Camden, you could do it. And I realized, you know what? I'm a parent. I need to shut up. I need to sit back and like let this happen. I will just cheer them on like, let's go. Good job, guys. And so my cheering was more of what they just did instead of what they should do.
Right.
And so now I'm volunteer. Now I'm going to be an assistant coach this upcoming season. But with that being said, we have to realize as fathers, we have to be an example to these kids because we don't know what these kids are going through. And coaching is a perfect avenue, not just to give them like, hey, you could be the best third baseman, or Noah's going to be a second baseman for the Baltimore Orioles here in 15 years. The first place Orioles.
Better than the freaking Yankees, man. We didn't even do anything in the trade.
You didn't do well. No one wanted the trade. Yeah, I'm not going to gloat over that at all. I'm not wearing an Orioles jersey right now. I promise.
Yeah, it was the first thing I noticed. I said, this guy
is. But we're wrapping it all up. When it comes down to the idea of fathering, we're still learning. We're still figuring this out as we go. The idea of coaching, we're still learning. We're still figuring this out. But the best thing, you don't be the dad on the sidelines watching your son learn how to catch the ball. Be the dad that teaches them how to catch. As fathers, we have to be present with our kids. If it's coaching, if it's in life, if it's whatever, we can't let things go by because they're going to learn, hopefully, those skills or those life lessons from someone else, hopefully. Because sadly, a lot of kids don't. A lot of kids don't get that opportunity. So if you're a dad, if you're like, well, my kid knows how to play catch, but I don't, or I'm not a sports person, or I'm not a music person, or I'm not an artist,
learn.
Yeah. It's
you want to be the role model? Learn. You will continue to be the role model.
Exactly.
Because guess what? Oh man, I didn't know how to do it. You didn't know how to do it, but we're learning together. The message that you send out is just so great. Like you touched on something that was really great. As a coach, what I get to do is I've seen other coaches how hard they are on their sons, and I'll see them crying after a game or something. And I feel comfortable enough to go up to them. And I'm like, hey, don't do that. Like, be proud of the effort that you put in. It's okay if another team is better than you on a certain day. We're all going to have bad days, whatever the way, however you're feeling. But it's not about what you just did. It's over with. What are you going to do next time?
Exactly.
What are you going to do to change this outcome? Like, I had a kid cry, and I was like, and I tell my team the same thing. So I told him, I said, do not give my players the satisfaction of seeing you cry out on this field. That fuels them. Do not let them see you cry.
Yep.
You just remember that. Remember this feeling.
Exactly.
Take it to the next time you play. And then I bit my words. The next time I played him, this kid played out of his mind. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to stop coaching that way because I also believe that we have to coach not just our kids, but all the kids this way.
Exactly.
You I don't know. That's just how I am. Like, you know, my players will tell me like, oh, hey, he's on the other team. Why are you talking to him like that? I'm like, because I'm not just coaching you guys, but I'm here to coach anyone who's willing to listen.
Exactly.
That's our job, is not just to coach our kids, but hey, we're all under the West Mesa banner.
Yep.
We got to, I want them to be good. Hopefully, I hope to be an all-star coach one day, and these guys are going to be playing for me in the all-stars, you know? So kind of, things like that. But
well, the fatherhood example, the fatherhood experience is a very important one, and it's one that we're talking about changing the blueprint, changing the idea of fathering, and it's those little moments that starts with our own experience with our kids. If we can't be with because you don't be a good coach and a good father to everyone else besides your kid.
Exactly. No,
so
right.
And that happens a lot too. We have to be across the board. Sure, we push our own sons because we know our sons. We know their abilities. We know what they're capable of. A little bit harder, but we still have to be across the board like the same leader to every single one, because we're going to teach them to be such. Because when it comes down to it, as a dad of two boys, you're a dad of two boys, we expect our kids to be the greatest, the best at, but it starts with us. And so dads out there, make sure that you're the one out there. Mike Camden.
Yeah, we can push him too hard too.
Yeah.
And we can scare him away from sports because of how hard we are on it.
And so you have to find that balance. You have to know when, like, Dad, I'm tired. Okay, let's go watch something, or let's go do. So you have to, your kids pretty well. You know their mindsets, their bodies, or etc. When it comes to anything with our kiddos, with sports, like Camden, he blows. If you see his drawings, he's an amazing artist. I can't draw to save my life. I could do the little Superman S that you used to do back in school. But he's like, Dad, let's draw airplanes. I go, I don't know how to draw an airplane. I was like, well then,
what do you mean?
Yeah, well, he's like, I was like, you know what?
It's easy.
Can you teach me how to draw an airplane? So you do this, and he's
loves that. Yeah.
Oh, and it shows that, like, if you are interested in what your kids are interested in, if it's sports, if it's whatever, if you show an interest, then they're going to that's going to be that, again, another core memory, that core moment of, like, my dad. If you're the dad on the sidelines, like, yeah, whatever, I don't care if you're catching a ball, like, whatever. That poor kid, thank God you were there to step up to show him how to catch, and now he's proud to catch a ball. That right there is like, do not be that dad.
Yeah, and life lessons too, man. Like, one of the things that are different between Alyssa and I, because we coach together, and she always gets on me about this, but she doesn't understand. I will give the other team every excuse, or I will give them everything they want, anything they want, because for 2 reasons. I don't want no excuses.
Yeah.
And I tell my team that. I tell my boys that. I say, hey, they're like, well, why are we doing it? Don't give them every reason. No excuses. If we lose, there's a life lesson there. That life is going to be unfair.
Yep.
Things are going to happen. But what are you going to do? Things are going to stack up against you. What are you going to do when that happens?
Exactly.
Let's learn from that, move forward. And if we win, you guys go to school with these kids. They cannot go to school the next day with a straight face and say, oh, well, they have 0 excuses. They have 0 excuses. So I'm a big, Alyssa's like, one player's like, hey, can we start, the game's at 12, but can we start like at 12:40 because we have a kid at baseball? Sure. It's their best player. So we started late, and Alyssa was pissed. She's like, I was like, no. Every excuse, give it to them. Give it to them. Let them have their best player. I don't want to play them without their best player anyway. Let them have their best player.
Yeah.
And we ended up beating them like 9-2. And then I looked at Alyssa, and I was like, they have no excuses, boys. They have 0 excuses. And they came over with 0 excuses, nothing, because they knew, like, dang, they gave us every opportunity to win, and we still didn't do it. It's on us. So that's another way I coach is if you lose, there's a lesson to be taught there about life, right? Because even parents are like, what are we doing? Why are you allowing them to do that? That's cheating. Or like, I'm a big basketball guy. So if there's a call at first, I think he's safe, and they call him out and they're there, I'm like, all right, you take that one. I'll get the next one.
Yeah.
Even though I know he's safe, you take that one, I'll get the next one.
Exactly.
And then I'll go to my boys and I'm like, look, we can't leave it up that close. You were safe, but it's all right. Sometimes it happens like that. There's going to be umpires that don't see it. So you got to understand, don't be upset about it or anything. Don't get mad. Just know that that's going to happen sometimes.
Yeah.
What are you going to do the next time? And so, again, it's always a coaching lesson. And that's my philosophy is regardless of the situation, regardless of how people want to cheat or anything like that, because I'm not a cheater, I will never cheat. So if they want to do all those things, let them.
Exactly.
I don't care. Let them, because it'll be that much better when we win. And there'll be a lot of lessons to be taught if we lose.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like how I like to coach.
And I love that. And Alex, thank you so very much.
Of course, man.
Coming on. And if you guys want to hear more with Alex's wonderful knowledge of everything, he has his own podcast called Cultural Punch Podcast. It's on every platform out there. So Cultural Punch Podcast, I was been a guest a few times.
But you're like an honorary host. I look at you as an honorary because we've done the most episodes with you. And I love doing episodes.
And we have
good chemistry.
Yeah, we have to get the football season's about to start here at Thursday, first preseason game.
Are you kidding me?
This Thursday, thank God.
I tell you, folks,
Football.
I go 7 days a week. So the people who are, I'm going to push this on my platform so they come listen to you, right? So the people who follow the Culture Punch podcast, so you guys understand why I don't record as much as I do. I'm busy, man. Like, you guys understand, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Kids come first. I've lived my life. I've done what I need to do. Like, I told this to my wife. I said, my boys retired me. Because I was playing soccer league on Sundays. I was doing co-ed and men. So I was playing like 4.5 hours back to back.
Yeah.
And they retired me. They're like, well, how so? Did you get hurt? No. They come before I do. I've lived my life. Now it's time to give them those memories. And they want to play in all these teams and whatever. And if I have the means to do it, we're going to do it. If that means me sacrificing my sports, I've played them. It's past my time. They retired me. I'm okay with it.
The pros aren't looking at us anymore.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. So, I love my boys that much to sacrifice anything for them.
So
that's all I've ever wanted was kids.
Every How to Father podcast, the guests, and we always end with a dad joke.
Okay.
Do you have a dad joke?
I do. I actually have 2, but I'm gonna go with the one that's baseball related.
Okay.
Since I'm a baseball coach. Okay, ready? So I kept wondering why the ball was getting bigger and bigger.
Okay.
And then it hit me.
and I have a sports one. We'll smear on baseball. Why was Cinderella? Well, see, like I should be more softball. Why was Cinderella a horrible softball player?
Oh, I don't know.
Because her coach was a pumpkin.
Nice. Dang, I thought I had something with the glass slip. I was like trying to think of it.
But, well, thank you guys all for listening. This is episode 7 of How to Father. Of course, the amateurness of being a dad. Thank you, Alex, for joining us.
Honored to be here, man. Thank you.
Follow, subscribe, his podcast, Culture Punch.
Culture Podcast.
Culture Punch Podcast.
Oh, can I give a shout out to the Culture Punch Studios on YouTube? You guys go check that out too, because I also do YouTube videos. I do a lot of unboxings, and I'll also do some tutorials on lighting and things like that. I love audio, so I do a lot of comparisons with different audio gear and microphones and things like that. So if you're looking to get into podcasting, or you're looking to get into videos and things of that nature, follow the Culture Punch Studios, because I do explain a lot of knowledge there, and I answer all my comments. So make sure you go follow on that as well.
Yes, shoot them a follow. Again, Alex, thank you so very much. Again, thank you everyone for listening. Next week we have a wonderful guest, my buddy Cody. We're going to talk about the importance of black fatherhood, and especially in this day and age, and the statistics that back it. So, Alex, thank you, and I hope to talk to you soon on that.
Of course, man. Thank you.
Thank you.